Hello guys. Today I'm going to show you how to use Python to interact with database. So database is very useful in many applications, especially when we want some data or records to be consistent across multiple Python sessions. So in this example, when I start this program, which is a game, I can input the name and the password. So the name and the password will be matched against the records in the database so that it will let me log in if I enter the password correctly, just like this. Okay, so it starts a Pokemon game like this. So right now, the player doesn't have many Pokemons at hand. So let's see what this player already has. So it seems the TA only has one Pokemon at hand, which is a Geodude. Okay, so let's try to catch some Pokemon. Okay, let me try to catch this guy. Oh, I was lucky and got this Pokemon at the first try. Now let me save and exit. And I'm going to close this game, so run the same program one more time. Okay. Still the same username and password. Oops, I entered the wrong one. Okay, so the second time when I log into this game and look at my hands, you see, the Pokemon that I just caught in my previous Python session is also reflected in the current session. So this is what we want to achieve from learning Python and database interaction from this tutorial. Okay, this is going to be the outline for today's tutorial. So first, I will start with introducing the overall framework for accessing database within Python. And second, I will show you how to connect to different databases, including the Python built-in SQLite, and also SQL Server, MySQL, and so on. And then I will show you how to execute SQL queries within Python. Okay. So after that, I will then show you two case studies, where the first one is to implement a player login system in which a player can enter username and password, and system will determine whether the user is a new user, a new player, or a returning player to the game. In the second case study, I will show you how how database can help us implement a Pokemon capture system. Okay, so this first sample code shows the overall framework for using database in Python. So this sample code has 5 blocks. The first block is importing whatever package that is needed to access the certain database. So in the first sample, we are trying to connect the Python built-in database called SQLite. So SQLite is a lightweighted default database provided by Python. And it's easy to use because we don't have to install any additional libraries or external packages. Okay, so we can use it directly. And in the second block, we are creating a connection and a cursor object. So the connection statement is like this, okay, which connects to a database called Pokemon test.db. Okay. So if the Pokemon test.db doesn't exist in our working directory, it will also create a new database with this name. And the cursor object is like an agent with which we can execute the following SQL queries in the third block. So in the third block, this cursor object is used to execute a create table SQL query. Okay, so in this example, it's creating an empty players table which has 4 columns, including the player name, password, level, and the experience the player has accumulated. Okay. So after executing this SQL query, because we want to make this change permanent, okay, which means we actually want this change to happen. Okay, so by doing connection.commit, the change will be made persistent. And in the last block, we are closing the connection that we have been using. So it's a good habit to close the connection whenever we don't use it. Now, let's run this code to see what happens. So it should create a new database called Pokemon test.db. So let's check this out. I just run this, and in my Python week 10 folder, alright, so here it is, Pokemon test.db. So in order to check the content of this SQLite database, I'm using a software called Gibi Browser for SQLite, which is very lightweighted and easy to use. So open database and choose the database file we just created. Okay, see, the players table has been created, and which has 4 columns: player name, password, level, and experience. Okay, so what if you want to connect to another database, not the Python built-in, but for example, SQL Server? Right, so this one shows how to connect to SQL Server. As you can see, the only changes that have been made is the first block and second block. So instead of SQLite 3, I'm importing PyOGBC, which is an external library that you need to install using pip. With that library, we need to also change the connection string to something in this format. Okay, so basically we need to specify the driver name, the server name, which is the IP address for the target database, and the database name, the user ID, and password. So in this case, I have already created a database called Pokemon, and also a user called test player. And that player has this password. So running this code should be creating a new table called players with these columns. Now, if I refresh this table, okay, so here it is. The players table has been created, and also with the empty table right here. Okay, so back to the previous sample code. So one thing we didn't do very well was here. So you can see you can see my password in the Python source code, which is very unprofessional. So in practice, we don't do this. Okay, we don't do hard coding or the database connection parameters in the source code, but instead, okay, so this is what we do in practice. Okay, so we usually create a database config file like this. Okay, so right here, it's actually just a text file. Okay, it's a text file that contains all the parameters and their values. Okay, the values are on the right-hand side. Okay, and I just changed the extension of this text file to config to just make it look a little bit professional. Okay, so basically, in the revised code, I'm reading from that configuration file and parsing out the database connection parameters right here. Okay, and those parameters will be used to dynamically create the database connection string instead of hard coding the connection string like this. So it's more recommended to read the database configuration parameters from a local file like this. Alright, so in the next piece of sample code, we are switching back to SQLite, and we are connecting to the Pokemon test.db. But instead of creating a table, we are trying to insert into the players table, insert 2 players. Okay, and we are inserting a player named Red with password 123456768, and another player called Green with password ABCDEFGH. And this part executes update SQL query. Okay, so updating the player named Green. Okay, update the password to the 123 blah 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 blah. Okay, so basically, as you can see, it's very easy to run SQL queries in Python. We just need to write the correct SQL syntax and make it as an argument to the cursor.execute function. So after running this sample code, we can see that, okay, so the 2 players have been inserted into the players table, and especially the second player's password has been changed. Okay, so in this sample code, instead of inserting and updating the table, I'm showing how to select from the table. Okay, so this time we are reading from another table that I have already created before, the Pokemon.db, which contains a relatively complete Pokemon meta table that has a lot of Pokemon information. Okay, so the select all from Pokemon meta will just get all the rows in that table, and results equal cursor.fetchAll will get all the rows returned by this select SQL query. And we can use a for loop to iterate through each row from the results and print them out. Okay. So when we do select query, we don't have to perform the connection.commit because we are not making any changes to the database table. Okay. We're just retrieving some data from it. So if we run this, okay, see, it just prints out all the information that we read from the Pokemon meta table. Okay. So here you can see that the format of the resulting row, okay, in this loop will be the tuple, okay, where the elements in this tuple are the values of each column in the table. Okay, again, going back to the previous code where we inserted 2 players. So again, here we were inserting the players by hard-coding their information right here. But this is not what we usually do in practice. In practice, of course, we don't insert players by ourselves, okay? But we want the database to accept the user input from the keyboard. Okay, so when user enters their username and password, we want to save their information in the database. Okay, so this is what we do. We use the input function to accept the username and the password that we read from the user keyboard input. Okay, and those username and password will be concatenated to the insert into players, the SQL string, okay, and they're combined together to become a dynamic SQL query. Okay, and that query will be executed by the cursor. Right, so some people get confused how to concatenate a static string with a variable. Okay, and here and there, there's what is this and what is this? So it can be a little bit confusing to some people. Okay. So let me give you a tip how to create a dynamic SQL query like that. Okay. Right, so suppose we have already tested static SQL query like this, okay, and make sure it works. Okay. And now this is the hard-coded part, right? The username and password. Okay. So if we want to replace these hard-coded username and password with the variable username and password, okay, we just need to select the hard-coded part. Okay. then type in a set of double quotes, then a set of plus. Okay? And between the plus symbols, we can use the username variable, okay, to replace the original hard-coded username value. Okay? So similarly, we can replace the hard-coded password with a set of double quotes, a set of plus symbols, okay, and put the password in between. Okay, right. So now we got a dynamically created SQL query that's going to be executed. And don't forget to commit the change in order to make it persistent. Okay, so now let's try the code. See, it accepts username from the keyboard. Let's say Mike, and password 1234. Okay, so after doing this, and going back to the table, right now here. Okay, so the players table right now. Okay, you see a new player Mike is created. Okay, so now let's move on to the case study, okay, which integrates everything we have covered so far today. Okay, so in the first case study, we are going to implement a user login system. So we should look like this. So the player should enter the username, and the system will check this username against the player table in the database. So if this username doesn't exist, the player should create a new password, and the system will insert the new record corresponding to this new user in the database. But if the username exists in the database, the player will enter the password, and the system will compare the entered password against the database password. Okay. So if they match, the database should show the successful message. But if not, it should reject the user to log in. But in practice, we change this a little bit. Okay. So if the user doesn't enter the right password, we usually want the user to enter it again. Okay. Again, until the user enters the right password. Okay. So we are going to implement this flowchart in Python. Okay, so this is the implementation of the flowchart that I have just shown you. So let's walk through this. We are importing the package first and making connection and creating a cursor. Right. Now the user enters the username, and we use the username variable to cache this. Okay, so the next, this cursor will execute select star from players where player name will equal the username variable. Okay, so we are retrieving the user information given this username variable coming from the keyboard input. Okay, and results equal cursor.fetch all. Okay, so all the returned rows will be stored in the variable called results. Right now, we have a selection statement here, if else. Okay. So if the length of this results is greater than 0, okay, what does it mean? Results is the collection of all rows returned by this select SQL query. Okay. So if the length of this result is greater than 0, it means at least one record is returned. Okay, at least one record is returned. Okay, so we use a variable called userinfo to store the very first row that is returned from select star. Okay, select star from players where player name equal username should be able to return a username, user information corresponding to the username entered from the keyboard. Okay, so that one is used to update the user info variable. Okay. Right, remember the user info variable should be a tuple with username, password, level, and experience. Okay, so user info index 1 should return the password for this user that is already stored in the database table. Okay, so we use password in DB variable to cache that. Right, next, we have another variable password, which gets user password that is entered from the keyboard. Okay, please enter your password. And we are comparing these two strings. Okay, this part is the password coming from the keyboard, and this is the password that's already in the database table. Okay, so while these two passwords don't match, okay, we ask the user to input the password one more time. Okay, password doesn't match. Please try, retry. Okay, and the new password will be used to update this password variable, and it's compared against the database password again. Okay, so this loop will continue over and over until the user enters the right password. Okay, and then it will jump out of this loop and prints "Welcome back. You are logged in as," okay, followed by the username entered by the user. Right. Okay, so else. Okay, else means the username is not found in the database table. Then we get the password coming from the user input. Okay, welcome new user. Please create your password. Okay, the user will enter some password, and that password plus the username will be used to create an insert statement. Okay, insert into player's table with this username, password. Okay, because it's a new user, so we want to give him level 1 0 experience. Okay, so cursor will execute that insert statement and then commit and close. Okay, so this should work. Let's try. Okay, so suppose okay, remember we have created a mic player before. Okay, so if I intentionally enter a wrong password, okay, password doesn't match, please retry. Retry. Okay, retry until we enter the right password for mic. Welcome back, you are logged in as mic. Okay, so it's working. Let's do it again. Run this. Alright, so for this time, let's enter a new user called Anna. Okay, welcome new player. Please create your password. Just for example, ABCD. Okay, so it's also working. Okay, so finally, let me just very briefly walk through how the Pokemon capture system is implemented by interacting with database. So I will just highlight the most important part, in the Pokeball class, okay, which is an item. When it's invoked, this is the key, okay, database.insert player Pokemon, okay, which is a custom function that I define in another module called database. Okay, so the player information and the Pokemon information will be passed on to this insert player Pokemon function in the database module right here. Okay, insert player Pokemon. So basically, this one just insert into the player Pokemon table in the database with all the information from the player and Pokemon. Okay, so that creates an association between the current player, and the captured Pokemon. Okay, and save the information into the database table called player Pokemon. Okay, so the next time when the player logs into the system will sync from the database tables. Okay, right here. Okay, like select everything from player items, okay, syncing all the items here, and select everything from player Pokemon where player name equal the current player's username. Okay, so basically it looks up all the Pokemons that have been captured by the current user and sync them to the player's Pokemon in hand attribute. Okay, so if you need more details, please subscribe to my channel and check out my other YouTube Python tutorials. Okay, so thank you for watching and see you next time.